Hello and welcome to Claus YouTube channel. Today we are once again with our audiences who are essentially going to be the DSSC aspirants who are trying to clear their examinations for a very important career course. And we are going to discuss our first episode of uh, Sino-Vietnam War, which is the military history campaign given out for this year's Staff College entrance examination. I am aware that the Brigadier Speaks channel has covered the various aspects of the campaign right from the beginning, including the leadership study. So we are going to focus essentially on the questions which might come in the examination. So this is a very important aspect. It goes beyond the studies which you have done, and probably they will become your last minute refreshment videos when you are going to appear for the military history examination. The reason being that you have to do the entire revision in one night. So in one night, you can only focus on key questions which might come up, and others, if they come, if they are beyond the likely questions, then you will have to go back to your memory and flesh them out. But that notwithstanding, we will also cover as to how you should tackle a question. That is very important because most of the time we don't know how to tackle these questions. As you all are aware, the questions are in the three categories. The first category is a 50-mark question, which is a long question, and which is got roughly about 300 to 400 words. And so therefore, you have to be very calculative as to how much and what you should write. Because if you write something which are not part of the question, so you have it. You will not succeed. Then you have the 30 marks questions, which are roughly around 200 words or 250 thereabouts. You can go a little bit up and down. Because if you become too verbose, I don't think the examiners have really the time to look for answer in your long winding uh, reply to a question. So with that brief preliminary, today what we will do is that we will focus on the Chinese military strategy, that is one issue, but also take up 3 to 4 questions depending on how much time we have. It will be a short question, short episode, so that you get the flavor of what kind of questions will come in the examination and how are you supposed to tackle them. It's very important, listeners. Hang on to your seats and over to Brigadier Bhatia.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, very rightly you said at times we are aware of the subject, but probably we do not articulate our responses accordingly. As far as the examiner is concerned, he's reading what the students have written in the answer sheet. So, despite knowing, because of lack of organizing your thoughts, at times we are not able to score the marks commensurating with the amount of hard work that we have put in. So that is why it is important that we must know the art of writing the answers. And here's a clause and brick speak. We have joined hands, sir, with your institution's experience, your personal experience, and with little bit of our experience. We have tried to organize the answers in such a way that it becomes that the flow is logical and the person who's reading it understands it and gives you the maximum marks. So, with this prelude, I'll start the today's presentation: Chinese military strategies, lessons learned. One another word of caution, sir. The prescribed book is Chinese military strategy. So the students have to pay attention to the heading. It is the military strategy that is to be seen as far as this campaign is concerned, and it was a very short war. So do not concentrate exclusively on the war, that what exactly happened during the war. Look at the strategy. When we talk about strategy, it is the geopolitical situation, what was existing at that particular time, how and why decisions were taken by China in this case, and Vietnam in reaction to what China has done. So that is why pay attention to the strategy. Don't ignore. And most of us are not used to the communist way of functioning, because it's in our own army, the way we work is very different from how the communist armies work. Political work, ideological training is very important in the communist countries. Though it is strange that one communist country has attacked another communist country because the third communist country, that is the USSR, was supporting the second one. So it's a bit of muddle. It is
And
also important to know that
here,
how come.
here,
Sorry.
one thing which I want to bring out for the understanding of the common public, or for the candidates, is that this was a period when the USSR and China were not seeing eye to eye.
Yes.
So it was a battle of space for communist world. So within the communist world, who would control more number of communist countries? That was the battle going on. And since Vietnam was on the backyard of China, China felt it as its legitimate right to have the control over Vietnam, right? And that became the motivation, besides the boundary disputes, etc., which China always brings it up. So this subtle difference you have to know, that the situation is totally different from what it is now. I'm talking of geopolitical situation in that region. Yeah, over to you.
So there are other books and articles also. I mean, the headings are the Vietnam War as China's watershed. It actually turned out to be a watershed, not so much in the military term as it was for the geopolitical term also. Though militarily also they realized that the old system, the way the PLA had fought the civil war, or they had fought against the Japanese invasion, uh, it was no longer applicable. Though PLA was involved in Korean campaign also, and thereafter in the India-China conflict of 1962, they in Korean War they lost very badly, but they still continued with the Maoist thoughts of men over weapon. India was not so well prepared, so they again, had won the war, but now they were fighting against Vietnamese. Vietnamese were constantly at war, initially with French till 54 and thereafter with the USA. USA, which is probably the most powerful army with latest technology and weapon, but they forced them to exit from Vietnam. The second thing what Jal Dushant was mentioning, sir, it is the interplay of ideology of Maoist China and communism as it was followed in Russia or USSR at that time, Soviet Union, and how Vietnam and Soviet Union had joined hands, and like again mentioned by Jal Dushan, China always considered Southeast Asia as its own backyard. So any interference in Southeast Asia, China was not comfortable with that. So the first thing which you may get a long answer, that is 50 marks nowadays, I think, is to discuss the Chinese objectives, strategy, and preparation for their attack on Vietnam in February 79. Now, see, to answer this question, we have to understand the geopolitical situation as it was obtained in the Indo-China region just prior to the war. Vietnam had attacked Cambodia. Now, what was the trigger? Why did Vietnam attack Cambodia? And how this was taken as a pretext. Now, Cambodia was an ally of China. So, how it was taken as a prelude or a trigger that China decided to launch a punitive war against Vietnam. They wanted to teach a lesson. That's why China attacked Vietnam. Sir, you have mentioned about Sino-Soviet split. From 60s onward, there was a split, basically personality clash, because after the death of Stalin, Mao was under the impression that he should lead the global communist movement, whereas Ho Chi Minh and of Vietnam, they thought that they are independent and they cannot be junior partner of Mao in this case. The world communist movement was moving from one place to another. The ideology was being uh, uh, twisted or revisited, as the communists say, by everybody. Uh, what China communism was very different from Soviet Union, then to Cambodia, then to Vietnam. So everybody was changing the basic tenets of communism according to the local needs and local environment. Political work, the role of political work in PLA was extremely important, very important for our students to understand that political work, that is, basically, it can be defined as the ideological training to ensure that the Communist Party continues to remain in power. The Civil War had influence on the way PLA has operated, and they continued till 1979. There was no change. There was talk of modernization, but nobody undertook any action plan to modernize. And the Japanese invasion, since Mao had won the Japanese invasion following the guerrilla technique. Now you can't go in for a guerrilla technique when you're going for an offensive. So the Vietnamese were better at employing the guerrilla technique because they were fighting against USA and they had mastered the art of guerrilla technique. And they were operating in their own terrain. So both ways there was advantage with Vietnam. With the Chinese leadership failed to appreciate. So to answer this particular question, we recommend that you should divide into what was the objective. The objective, as stated by the leadership of the Communist Party of China, was to check Vietnamese, and like Vietnam and Soviet had signed an accord,
just
their
just
ambition in
uh,
Southeast Asia.
Brigadier Bhatia, just a
Sir,
minute. Uh, what I want to tell the the candidates or aspirants is, look at the question. It's been framed very simply. The questions normally may not be framed so simply. There
yes,
would be possibly a bit of a backgrounder,
preamble.
and then the question might come. But there are three operative parts of this question which Brigadier Bhatia is trying to identify and tell you that please focus on them. 300 words are only meant for those three bullet points: objective, strategy, and preparation. Period. Yeah.
So they had an objective of, teach Vietnam a lesson. Now, subsequently, we'll see, can you give this set of objective when you're going for a war? So limited, political in nature. So annihilation of enemy in any case is an automatic fallout of a war. Then examine in this particular thing also the extent up to which the objective, which was stated as teaching Vietnam a lesson, could be achieved. So this will take care of your first part of the question, that is, what were the objectives and did the PLA achieve, or the Chinese leadership achieve this objective or not? Coming on to strategy. Chinese, like I said, had learned from their past experiences, and it was strategy was limited to only what they had learned. That is, strike vital parts of the defense with overwhelming force and firepower, and cut enemy defenses into pieces, break resistance, and annihilate. I will very quickly add what Mao used to say. He used to say, and like Mao's warfare or thoughts on warfare were more based on guerrilla warfare. He used to say that let the enemy walk in, keep withdrawing, and thereafter go and strike him at the weakest point. They're breaking it into pieces. But again, when you're going for offensive, you cannot do this. So there was a fault in strategy that was decided for this particular operation. Now, war was, though they say three phases, but there were two executive phases. First phase was two-pronged offensive against Cow Bang. I have a map subsequently, and there is a question on the phases, so I will explain there. And there was a simultaneous attack on Dongdang to confuse Hanoi. So a little bit of surprise and deception was built in, but the terrain was such. The Vietnamese were so smartly, they had appreciated the terrain. They said he may bring in any amount of force, but can he apply at the place of decision, at the point of decision? So Vietnamese were better at appreciating the ground and accordingly take up the defenses. And in the
Uh,
second phase, sir,
Again, if you are running short of time, I'm giving you some hints, right? The second part of the question which says highlight the phases. Just draw a quick sketch, mark it, and put all these objectives, and go ahead to the preparation part, right? You don't have to go into so much details also. These are because we are giving you a proper presentation, we are giving into that. But when you are making an exam, when you are writing in the exam, have the major points put on your sketch, mark the phases, phase 1 this, phase 2 this, switch on to the third part of it. You will restrict yourself to that.
Sir, absolutely, sir. Our advice is this map of North Vietnam, that outline map, everybody should just remember it. Keep practicing it.
Yeah.
Mark the
Put it
border
on,
approximately, mark the rivers, mark the highways.
put it in your
And
table. Put it on
sorry,
your
sir.
table. Put it. I said,
Yes,
put it on your table. Put it in your dining hall, wherever you want it, study room. But have this map as by hearted by you.
on this map, I have not marked the roads and rivers. Do mark those roads and rivers also. But I didn't want to clutter the map. That's why I didn't mark it. And just these are the important issues. Now, when you're talking about terrain, you should know that in northeast were high mountains, northwest was comparatively correction other way around. Northwest were high mountains and northeast was plains. So accordingly, the implications will automatically throw up.
Yeah.
So getting back to, so this, I thought I will show this map.
No, 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 it's okay.
The preparations, how the preparations were done. It was in late December 78 that Chinese troops carried out bit of combat training and exercise. But surprisingly, the emphasis was still on political indoctrination. It was not so much on military training and propaganda to persuade soldiers. Now here, the erstwhile Maoist thoughts on military was prevalent that men are more important than weapons. Mao and PLA were still following the tactics of human wave and fire wave. That you keep sending troops, keep sending, which they employed in, like I said, Korean campaign as well as an Indian campaign. That you
Yeah.
keep sending human waves after waves. But this didn't work this time. So with this, I think broadly, if you divide your question and write what we have written, so we've told you, so you will be able to score answers. But having got the idea, if you want to go in details, that is the time I will strongly recommend that the notes that have been published by Claus, you may like to have a copy of that, so that you read it and absorb it and thereafter reproduce it in the same sequence.
Yeah.
In warfare, question number two, in warfare, it is vital that the military fights with clear objective and a desirable end state on the termination of the war. In your view, did the Sino-Vietnam War of 1979 encompass these two issues for China? Partially it has been answered in the first question, but here the smart part is write about strategy. What is the strategy? Strategy is a plan of action to achieve some end. That is objective. You define an objective, then you work out on your strategy. That how should you achieve this end? That is your objective. And then you employ operational art. Now, operational art is, you break the strategy into small little campaigns and operations. Then you integrate them, look for ways and means of integrating them, and then also account for the risks and make contingency plans. So in short, operational art is a bridge between the strategy, which is at the highest level, and tactics, which is at ground level. In between the strategy and tactics is operational. If I may say, up to a division is a tactical battle. Core gets into operational battle, command and above is strategic. This will help you in your TAC A and B papers also. That what is the difference? Now,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
were China's publicized limited objectives obtained? Write a line on that. We have discussed about it. How limited was the objective? And this political objective, the Chinese political leaders and thereafter military leaders failed to convert the political aim into military aim. So that was the issue with the PLA. What happened in 1979?
I mean, simply put, if you just focus on the question, and you're aware as to, it's a very straightforward question. It is not a thinker question. Let me just put it this way. Some people may say it's a thinker question because the way it has been worded. It simply says, what were the objectives of the end state? Now it's given in the notes. These were the objectives and the end state. Brigadier Bhatia explained to you exactly what do you mean by strategy. Now, strategy is the way to achieve that end state. Strategy at the way to achieve at the higher level is strategy where resources are given, where lines of operations are given, and along those lines of operations, how are you going to fight would become the operational art, and along these operational art, then there are battles, tactical battles. Those become your tactics, right? So if simply put, you have to basically answer it, what was the end state, and was it able to achieve them? Simple.
Correct.
If you answer these two, this is a 30-mark question, 200
Yes.
words. Try to be brief and to the point, to the question asked. Yeah.
Actually, it's very important to understand for our students, sir, that it's what are the marks. So, how much you need to cover? Because I had mentioned elsewhere also, what happens is when the examiner is checking the paper, he's under tremendous pressure to check the papers. So, if it is 200 marks at 200 words, he probably will very seriously read up to 200 words. But if your main punch is going to come after 200 words, he may not read it.
Yeah.
So try and make the job of the checker, the examiner, simpler by giving him whatever is the most important thing in the beginning
Yeah.
and
Yes. No.
divide it accordingly. Okay. These are the phases we have already spoken about it. There were two phases primarily. Phase one, which started on 17th of February, and some books mention that phase one, where they had a very limited objective of capturing three capitals of the provinces on the border area. That is Lokai, Kaobang, and Longson. In phase one, the initial plan was 48 hours, but they continued from 17th February and they could not capture it till 25th of February. So this is lack of preparation, that they did not study the terrain properly, they did not employ the forces properly, and then on 25th of February they began phase 2 where they launched massive attacks on Pongtho, Sapa, again Kaobang and Longson. One correction, phase one was Dongdang, which is just north of Longson, and phase two was Longson. Now, why Longson? Because Longson was the shortest distance to Hanoi. Now, why Hanoi? Because Hanoi is the most important city, the capital city. Capturation of capital city is considered as a victory. So, PLA wanted to go to Hanoi and destroy it. Did they reach there? Probably not. Now, Vietnamese smartly had realized that Longson is going to be the easiest and it is closest to the likely ultimate objective of PLA. So, 1978 onwards, they had started dumping what do you call logistics there, fuel there, and they used militia who were tucked into the villages which were all along the highway. And in phase one, The Vietnamese did not use their regulars, they used their militias. They kept the regulars closer to Hanoi because Hanoi is in Red River Delta. It is plains. So they wanted more troops on plains. Whereas the militia were able to harass them, even if PLA had won an objective, moment they were going ahead, these people were cutting off their logistic lines, blowing up the bridges. So extended logistic lines with the constant fear of being blown off, and instead of PLA cutting Vietnam into pieces, it is the other way around. The entire column was actually getting, the communications were broken in pieces, and the formations were cut off from the forward area, was cut off from the rear area and from the logistics. Now, PLA's experience in the 1979 war with Vietnam provides useful insights into how Chinese leaders approached matter of war and strategy. Now, this particular question can also be used in lesson learned. It can also be used to say that what is for India to learn from studying 1979 war. Why should Sino-Vietnam campaign be part of the military history campaign for DSSC entrance exam? So there are three very major readings which, as a military person, we can draw from this. Besides other, that China does not hesitate to go for war if its national interests are at risk. Now, what was his national interest? See, Soviet Union had friendship treaty with Vietnam. 69 onwards, there were border problems between China and Soviet Union. Up in the northeast portion, Soviets were already, they've had a 1969, I think they had a, confrontation. Soviet Union had a border in Xinjiang also. Now, Mongolia, Soviet Union had done a defense treaty. Now there were three fronts in north, northwest, and northeast, and the fourth front would have opened had Vietnam gone the Soviet way. So the national interest of China was at stake. So to ensure that Soviet Union does not come to Vietnam, they launched an offensive. Second thing was seizure and maintenance of operational initiative. Chinese like to do this. Any interruption in this, and the Chinese army goes into disarray. The military victory defined by geopolitical outcomes and not operational performance. Like I said, the political aim of China was not very strictly defined into the military aims. That what exactly would be conceived as a military victory. So 1979 war remain relevant to understand Chinese approach to employing military power. Now, if you take this as a operating thought in your mind, the points will automatically flow. If you have read something, even if you are not prepared for this question specifically, but if you know the background and you keep this thought in your mind, points will come to your mind and you will be able to answer and fetch extra marks.
Yeah, here I want to add one more point, just
So,
so that all of you don't miss out on a very important aspect of answering a question like this. Where we are talking of, say, insights, lessons, etc. You see, the 3 points which are given are related to the war fighting. Okay, but the fourth point, which has not been written here, and we must all understand, is a flow out from the third point, which is military victory defined by geopolitical outcomes, not operational performance. Look at what is happening today in Israel Hamas. Look at
yeah.
what is happening today in Russia Ukraine. Militarily, possibly Russia is has won over Ukraine in terms of damages, in terms of, if you calculate the the in terms of physical, so many tanks, so many prisoners, so many have flown away, have left or migrated from Ukraine. And similarly, in the case of Hamas, so many people are refugees, so many people have got killed, 33,000 now versus 1,200. But What is the geopolitical outcome? That's very important. And how do you define who controls the geopolitical item? That is the fourth point which you have to add. It's the leadership, right? A leader may decide to come out victorious. 1971 war, India.
Yeah.
Smart leader did the job, came out, victory written all over in the name of India. With the geopolitics being very sensitively and very calculatively being handled. Now, this kind of an insight is required when you enter into such wars. The Chinese also suffered the same kind of fate what is happening in Israel and Russia-Ukraine war, right? So we have to be very, very clear that the fourth aspect of leadership must be highlighted. And in this case, what are the leadership? Deng Xiaoping on the Chinese side. Deng Xiaoping's leadership took a hit. His image actually took a major hit because of this war. Later on, of course, he managed to change tack and then get liberalization and all those aspects
Very
onto.
smartly, sir. I will add. In fact, Deng Xiaoping very smartly went and did a just before the war he went to USA
Yeah.
and
So
and
so
and
yeah, go ahead.
he went to USA and he actually got a support because he knew that Cold War was on. So
Yeah.
USA was ready, and then now Deng knew that Soviets have withdrawn, and in case China wants to do well, and his aim was economics. If he, if China, he wanted technology.
Yeah.
If Soviet is not ready to give it, USA ka ally banke in this Southeast Asia also he will dominate, and he will counter Soviet Union on behalf of USA also. So
And
very
similar,
smartly with
right.
this move, he got USA into its camps.
Yeah, and similarly, the Vietnamese military leadership as well as national leadership was quick to learn from the American war, and
Yes.
they exactly employed a similar guerrilla tactics against the Chinese, and the Chinese lost their way around. Right?
And we say
Ultimately,
that it was Mao who was the first one to use guerrilla tactics,
absolutely,
but
absolutely, their own
Vietnam has
medicine was
turned the
given.
tables.
Yeah, it was their own medicine given to them, by
Correct.
an opponent. So leadership, fourth point you can add in this exam, in this
Yeah.
particular question. Okay, go ahead.
Enumerate the lessons learned by China from its experience of 1979 Sino-Vietnam War. You know, I had said earlier also that China lacked experience of real war. They had won, they had gone for Long March, they had won against the nationalist army, that is KMT, Kuomintang, and they had won against the Japanese. But
Yeah.
that was, and then of course they went to Korea where they had defeated USA, all right, but the losses were very, very heavy. Was that victory worth it? But being a communist country and dictator, probably nobody questioned Mao. Mao was a very, very big or huge leader. Uh, there was nobody in China who could question him. But what were the major reasons? Where, because of lack of experience, Chinese underestimated opponents. They still have the feeling of being superior, of middle kingdom, of chosen people. If I'm not exactly that, they are meant to rule all under the heaven. That's the term they use.
Correct.
And like now, I'm remembering Deng Xiaoping's very popular saying. He used to say, "Seek truth from fact." But here, Chinese themselves faltered. They did not seek truth from fact. They had few facts which were probably in their mind, but things had changed. They did not go and learn about the geography, about the terrain. The maps which were being used were made by the French when they were there in 1954. A lot had changed. In fact, Hoover's institute report, they say that most of the senior leaders of PLA did not know how to read maps. There was no reconnaissance that was carried out.
Absolutely.
And the Vietnamese militia, the Chinese had not taken into account. And in the phase one, from delay from 48 hours planning to 8 days, the delay was basically caused by these militias. So you cannot forget a such an important component of a fighting force, that is militia. And when China themselves are using militias, they had militias. Militias also participated in the 79 campaign, but they probably did not cater for the militias of Vietnam. Then this was the first time that Chinese commanders were employing or fighting a combined arms employment. They didn't know this. They had never done it. They never needed RT, air, and infantry operating together in any of the wars that they had fought. So the experienced leaders, military leaders, also didn't know how to use the arms, combined arms. Air Force and Navy, forget it. Even artillery could not be coordinated. Command and control, again, it was extremely poor because the combat experienced officers were not there. Junior leadership. Now, this is a very important aspect. Junior leadership, this even today we are finding it that the junior leadership is still looking over their shoulder for orders because the system in China is such that authoritative regime of Communist Party, the leaders always look forward to higher ups for decisions. So the junior leadership did not take the decisions that were required. And of course, logistics supply system to support the fast-paced offensive operation was never in place. So these are briefly. Another thing I will say is that our students should also understand there is a difference between comment, enumerate, list, discuss. So when the question comes that what is the question? Please read. So in subsequent programs today, I think running down our time. In subsequent programs, I think we should actually clarify to our students that what is it. When
Yeah,
you are told to comment, what should you write? When you're
yeah,
told to enumerate or to list, how you should answer, because otherwise you're wasting times.
yeah.
And then, of course, what are the larger geopolitical gains from war to China? What did China gain? Of
A,
course, it
sim-
enhanced Beijing's
a,
presence,
sim-
prestige in
a, s-
Southeast Asia. Sir,
a simple way to tell our audience to understand, or especially the participant, is to go to the Oxford Dictionary and see the meaning of all these three.
correct.
You will automatically find what is the difference between enumerating, listing, etc. Right? There are minor differences, but there are differences. Okay,
No, it makes difference, sir, because then otherwise you are unnecessarily wasting your time. If you are told to list, then you just list.
list.
Don't explain.
It is objective. Bas.
Yes,
You have 8 points, write those 8 points, have your
correct.
acronyms if you want, develop your acronyms, put it down, and go ahead to the next question. No
Absolutely.
use spending time on a question which you know more than 5 to 6 minutes, right? Just because you know it, don't start writing a theory essay on that.
And our students must be aware, but every question is checked by different examiner,
So,
so you are not impressing by writing a good answer that you he will have sympathy and start giving you extra
if
marks
it
in
is,
the other questions. It doesn't
if it
happen.
is a,
He will
if it is
mark
a
only his part of the paper.
if it is a 10-mark question, that's it. That much is the time you have to devote on that. Okay.
Okay. Sir, so this war enhanced Beijing's prestige in Southeast Asia because he was decisive and he could stall. Nothing happened after that of the Soviet Vietnam defense treaty, which they had done. Then credibility was there. Chinese warning were there of unacceptable aggressive behavior, which Chinese were telling Vietnam. So they couldn't have backed out because they had been warning Vietnam for quite some time. Yes, it did increase the economic difficulties of Vietnam. So, what is happening? In a way, sir, like you had said the other day in one of our podcasts, कि CNP की अपनी लाइन बढ़ाओ तो उसकी कम कर दो.
Therefore,
So that was also a differentiation. He hit the comprehensive national power of Vietnam very badly.
correct.
And the next point is there was 1978 Soviet Vietnam's defense treaty. Its future was finished the day Chinese had attacked, because Soviet did not fully fulfill. They did move some ships and all, but they did not fully stand up to what they had promised in the treaty. The war helped improve US-China relations. This I had covered earlier, sir. And then that is Deng Xiaoping's reputation internationally and domestically had improved tremendously. So, with this, sir, these were probable questions which we had decided to cover today. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. My request to the viewers and to the participants is, like and subscribe to the Clause YouTube channel and the Brigadier Speak channel. Brigadier Speak channel has done a lot of work. They have given you the backgrounders of the entire history campaign, and I must compliment them for that. We were planning to do it as part of Clause. I said, why repeat a thing if it has already been done by someone? And collaboration is always better than competition. So that was our intent of doing this particular episode in a manner that you all benefit from two major think tank minds. And as many views you will hear, you will find that your understanding of the campaign becomes better. So like and subscribe, and be regular on the channel. We will this time we could not give you much of a warning, but all those who are following the channel can watch it in your own time, and also share it with your other colleagues who are there in various parts of the country, posted to remote areas, so that they can actually look at these YouTube channels. It will help them in understanding the entire campaign of Sino-Vietnam War. We will soon come up with the leadership questions, and also we will develop few more questions so that you are prepared for your last minute revisions by the time you. It does not mean that you are not supposed to do a full preparation. That of course goes without saying, but your last minute preparation, these videos will help you quickly go through the slides. You will be able to refresh themselves. Just remember one very, very important factor while you are studying military history. Incidentally, during my pre-staff, because one doesn't know his staff college responses. In our time, when I gave the exam, only 225 people were shown as clearing the military history, of which the rumors go that only 20 to 25 had cleared clearly, the rest all had been given grace mark. So military history is a difficult subject. Take it very, very seriously. So the understanding which I got of military history was, have the maps in your mind.
Yes.
If you have the maps in your mind and the lines in your mind, and how do you make the lines? Simply understand the strategy. Strategy means the plan. Understand the lines of operation. Understand the key battle points. Now so very clear. If you know these 3 4 points itself, your half the job is done. If you know Longsin, Kaobing, Lokal, so all these places were very, very critical for the operations of China into Vietnam, with the ultimate aim being to teach a lesson as to what today we covered. And Hanoi being threatened, no, see, everybody wanted to go to the center of gravity, so they had selected a territorial center of gravity, not a force center of gravity. These things you must understand. And then if you know only this much, you can answer any question, let me tell you. But for that, you have to do a lot of reading, lot of studying. Have the maps in your mind, and wish you all the very best for the future. Thank you very much. We will come back soon with another episode, with few more insights into the Sino-Vietnam War
Sir,
and the
another
personalities.
thing, sir, another thing I want to add, sir, I'll request the viewers to please go through the entire presentation. Why?
Yeah.
Because at times we presume that you have seen the entire presentation, so the next episode you may not understand because we may refer back to these
Yes,
presentations. So,
absolutely.
if like on our analytical tool, I see that people watch it for about 2.5 minutes, and then they skip towards the end.
Yeah.
So that is because then we don't know that what have you learned and what haven't you learned. You will lose the link. So even if you
And
are watching it at a high speed, it's okay. But then you do watch.
yeah, I mean, if you have short of time, watch it at 1.5 or 2 speed. You will be
Correct.
able to understand. You will be able to understand it. It will take you 50% of the time. This episode is also technically speaking about 25 minutes of meat. Rest all has been introduction, etc. Thank you very much, Jahan. Thank you, Brigadier Bhatia. I
Thank you,
think
sir.
we'll end the show here.
Thank you, sir.